Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, and you are listening to the Giving Town podcast, where we share stories of hope and generosity in our wonderful community of Newberg, Oregon, and the surrounding area. In today's episode, I'm talking to Dennis Littlefield, Executive Director of Camp Tilikum in Newberg. Camp Tilikum is perhaps best known for its summer programs, but it really is so much more than that. There's a lot of new projects going on there. They have an amazing challenge course, and there's a lot of great things that Camp Tilikum does that I wasn't even aware of, and I was a camp counselor there about a decade ago. So if you're a fan of Tilikum, or if you've never heard of Camp Tilikum, I can almost guarantee that you're going to learn something new and that you're going to enjoy this episode. This podcast is sponsored by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group, and we're a family real estate team with Premier Property Group, LLC. And I make this podcast because, one, I love this town and I love highlighting the great people and organizations of this community. And also, I want to help people understand how great of a community Newberg is. I help a lot of people move here, and so it's important that people know that Newberg is much more than maybe some headlines that they've seen. So if you're a fan of this podcast, feel free to share it with anyone you know who either lives here already or is planning on moving here, so that we can share the positive side of the things happening in Newberg. And with that, let's get to my conversation with Dennis. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. I've got a special guest for you today. Dennis Littlefield is joining us from Tilikum. He's executive director out there. And many of you know about Tilikum, you've heard of it, but Dennis is going to be sharing a bit about what Tilikum is, why it's special to Newberg. So Dennis, thank you so much for joining me today, and look forward to sharing a little bit more about Tilikum with Newberg.
Thank you, Daniel. It's exciting to learn more about the Giving Town podcast. I've watched a few of your episodes, or listened to them rather, and so it's been neat to see the emphasis on reaching out and helping others, and glad to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And like we said, a lot of people may have heard of Tilikum, or they're kind of familiar with what it is, but some people probably haven't heard of Tilikum, or they maybe heard the name but don't know what it is. So can you share briefly, what is Camp Tilikum? What makes it such a special part of Newberg?
So Tilikum started in 1971, so we just passed our 50th anniversary just a year ago, and it was great to have a chance to celebrate that milestone and revisit some of those things. But Tilikum is located about 7 miles west towards Gaston from Newberg, so we're not too far away, out in the Chehalem Valley. And we are a Christian camp and retreat center. In the summertime, we host kids camps, day camp, quest camp, high adventure camp, and then on a year-round basis, we are a small retreat center, about 50 people at a time, usually adults, sometimes family groups will stay there, and so it's a unique spot. The setting is very pastoral. We have this nice lake that I'll talk more about that later in the podcast, and also just a long tradition of thousands and thousands of kids coming to camp there and having a great experience.
Yeah.
So it is neat that in general, you talk to people in Newberg and they consistently have fond memories of being out at Tilikum.
Well, and Tilikum has a special place in my own heart too, because 10 years ago now, I was a camp counselor out there. And, it's just one of those, probably one of the, I don't know, probably maybe tied for one of the best summers of my life, just the community that you have and getting to play with a bunch of kids and, basically just make a goofball out of yourself the whole time. But if you haven't been out there, it's a pretty unique experience, because it's one thing I kind of like is there's no self-service, at least on much of the property, there's no self-service. So you get to just kind of leave your phone in the car, don't think about it. And it's a huge, how many acres is it?
93 acres.
93 acres. And it's
almost a 100-acre wood.
Yeah, really. No, I never thought of that. But really, there's so many trails, so many amazing opportunities to go out. And like for a retreat of any kind, it kind of makes me wonder why I haven't gone out there more myself. Because I remember just taking a walk on those trails, and it's just so peaceful in a way that there's not many other, even on the trails and like walking trails around here, it's a different experience. So yeah, if you haven't been out there, you should check it out. It's pretty awesome up there.
Tilikum's purpose is to be a place where people can go to experience creation, build community, find refuge, encounter God, and see lives transformed. So I think in a lot of ways, when people come and do walk the grounds, they can sense God's presence there, in just inherently in that. And so it's kind of fascinating. It's not common that you feel or sense that in a way that's unique like that.
Yeah. Well, and I love just the intentionality with that. You know, you guys are not ashamed of your purpose. You do what you do, and the kids come and the parents send the kids because it's a great opportunity to learn, but also experience something that is an opportunity that you can't really get anywhere else. I'm not sure of any other camp that's quite like that. I mean, there's a lot of summer opportunities for kids, but not for them to have 93 acres, almost a real 100-acre wood experience, and just kind of be out in nature like that. So can you share a little bit about the different programs and kind of what makes them unique, and why Tilikum is kind of uniquely positioned to do what it does?
When Tilikum first began, there was the 93 acres, and there was a house and a barn and a lake, and that was about it. And the original director is like, well, we don't have a lot of cabins, and we can't do overnight camp, so why don't we try a day camp? And what they didn't realize was how successful that program could be. Just because of the setting, it allowed them to do some programs and activities that couldn't be replicated other places just because of that. Mm-hmm. And so the day camp program grew, and lots of kids came, and so it was mostly the younger grades. So 1st through 6th grade was the day camp group. And then it became obvious that there were some other activities that could be added. So in the 90s, we added the challenge course. So a lot of activities, both low activities for team building and high activities for more of an individual challenge. We just this year completed a brand new zip line, for instance, as a new addition to the collection. And so that allowed the older kids activities that are very appropriate for the older level. And then in the late 90s, we added overnight camp for the high adventure activities. And so then that was a new feature. And all of that's under the context of what we do just with summer and kids.
Yeah. Now, can you kind of describe a little bit about the challenge course? Because it's actually a pretty, some might call it intense, some might call it, I mean, it's a pretty big deal. And I don't know if anything else quite like that around here.
Mm-hmm. Challenge courses are common at a lot of camps, but the philosophy and how you use the course can vary broadly. And so, for instance, out towards Forest Grove is the Tree to Tree Adventure Park. And basically, it's just a series of high elements, and it's meant more for an individual activity, but groups can do it, where they go through the activity walking on these high ropes elements. And whereas Tilikum's course is much more of a team building, and there's a purpose behind each activity you do, and there's a challenge to that, but then the facilitators help that group as a whole to come up with creative solutions and figure out how to accomplish the different tasks, and then draw out the pros and cons of that interaction as a group to help them grow and learn.
Yeah.
And so some courses don't do that as much. They aren't and so there's a lot of intentional philosophy behind how you use the course that then we feel is fitting with Tilikum's purpose and goals.
And then I want you to continue talking about some of the things that you added, but while we're on the challenge course, that's something that that corporate structure or corporate entities have come and used, businesses. It's a good thing for team building. I know the leadership Cheyenne Valley has gone out there with Linda and has done that. But can you share why that's so special or unique or important? Because I think a lot of people, when they think, why would I go and spend, I don't even know what it costs, but seeing it as an investment and how it can actually bring a team together. Have you gotten real feedback of how it's helped bring a team together? Can you share some of that?
Sure. In camp ministry in general, there's the term the temporary community, where you take people outside the normal environment they're involved in and put them in a temporary community. And a challenge course is kind of a microcosm within that, where you take people outside their normal setting into activities that certainly there's a little bit of anxiety initially, and especially with an adult group because they're not quite sure what they're going to get into.
Yeah.
And yet it's completely safe. And we never push individuals to do something that they really don't want to do. But it's okay to encourage them to try something that they might be hesitant to. And in some cases it might be to climb a ladder up 3 steps to begin the process of getting on an upper element. And maybe that's the full extent of their challenge, but in other cases they are able to do more challenging things. A lot of the team building, though, is on low elements, where it's really more, it's kind of like an escape room type thing where you've got this puzzle in front of you and you're not quite sure how to figure it out, but you have to brainstorm as a group of people and come up with the solution. And some of those solutions fail miserably, and some others fully accomplish whatever the goal that's laid out. And then they realize, oh, we did work well together. Or oh, sometimes the person in the group that's the softest spoken actually has the best answer to that. And so it helps affirm individuals who may not be the most, the strongest leaders necessarily, but they often are the ones that can help a group, be successful.
It's interesting. A while back, I heard about a study that I think it was Google that ran it. They looked at all the different attributes of what makes a team, what makes a team the most successful. Is it where they came from? Is it their education? Is it their IQ? They looked at all the different parameters, and the one thing they came down to is how well do they work together? How well is the feedback from the lowest, person on the totem pole to the highest? Like, how well is the feedback received? And, does everyone feel like they have a voice that they can commit or that they can share without being criticized? And that was like the number one thing of what made a team successful. So with that, like you just said, the softest spoken person, if they learn, I do have good things to share. And if they see that their ideas are welcome and they're not going to be criticized or shot down, it's really the number one thing in building a team. So I think it's an excellent opportunity that maybe businesses haven't thought about, of if you're having any type of issues with employees getting along, or employer, or the managers versus the subordinates, all that. If you're having issues there, doing something like bringing people out to the challenge course might be a really good opportunity to do that. So if a business was interested, how would they? Is there a way that they could reach out and schedule that? So
Scott Diefenbaugh is our challenge course manager.
Okay. And
probably the best way just to send an email to scott@camptilikum.org.
Okay.
And we work with all different kinds of school groups, college groups, sports teams, corporate groups.
Okay.
We worked with Nike and Intel and others like that. So it's a broad spectrum. And with each group, they meet initially with Scott and talk about, okay, what are our goals?
Yeah.
What are the main things we want to focus on for? And then Scott will create a day experience with a whole series of activities that match those purposes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I wanted to get that in because I think it is such a special thing that you guys do. But you were in the middle of talking about how the challenge course was something that was added to allow for the teen programs and for the kids. Because it started with the younger kids, that was added. There's the overnight camp. So I'll let you kind of take it back from there. Yeah.
So in addition to things for kids, we do a lot of things for families. And so some of the programs we have, for years we've had a parent-child weekends. It might be father-son, it might be mother-daughter. We do a single mom's family camp. We do father-daughter. So we've done most of the combinations there, and we found that oftentimes, if you bring an entire family to a retreat or to an activity, that's certainly fun, but there's a very different dynamic if you have one parent and 1 or 2 kids or something like that.
Right.
So like the father-son, father-daughter, mother-son, mother-daughter, that there's excellent communication and relationship that can just blossom even over a weekend in that. And so then we bring in speakers and activities. They do a lot of the same activities we do at camp, and give them a chance just to really spend time together. And then in addition to that, we've added a family camp which I don't think we were doing when you were on staff.
Okay.
And it basically it's a week-long family camp where a lot of folks who might be about your age, who have kids that are about the age to start coming to camp.
Okay.
And but they live too far away. And so they can come and stay in our main lodge, and their kids get to stay in the lodge and eat the great food that we prepare, which is really very good. And then during the day, their kids run off and go to camp, and parents kind of have a vacation.
Wow.
And it's phenomenal. Between, your typical family vacation, you have to come back and have vacation from vacation because it's so intense.
Right, yeah.
All the travel and all the logistics and you name it. And so people just love this little piece of heaven that they can have and experience, because then they have great activities in the evenings with their kids. They can sit around the campfire and roast s'mores. But and we've done this with my own. So for instance, my wife's extended family, we all decided to turn it into a family reunion. So then all the cousins, different generations of kids were about the right age to attend camp. And so a whole bunch of the cousins got to go to camp the same week, and all the parents got to hang out and spend some time together. And again, it was just this awesome experience that is kind of rare. It's not common for people to do that.
So when is that? Is that every year?
In July. We'll have a couple weeks this next summer that we'll do a family camp that'll coincide with our kids program. Okay.
I had no clue. I didn't even know about the father son mother daughter thing. I didn't know about that. Granted, I'm a little bit on the newer side to parenting, but that's so interesting. So is that like around the Mother's Day, Father's Day?
Yes. So the mother daughter would be Mother's Day weekend. Father son would be Father's Day weekend, and then the others are some. We usually have about every 2 weeks, every other week in the summer. Then we spread out the different. So
the kids camps are happening, and then kind of in the middle of that, there'll be different
on the weekends.
On the weekends, okay. Yeah, I don't know how I didn't know about that, but that I just think so. My son's 4 years old, and I think
so he's a little 5. Young. They can go to the parent-child camp.
Okay, and is that for family camp too? They have to be 5 to do the programs and stuff?
They would need to be going into first grade.
Okay.
So they've completed kindergarten, going into first grade, and then they can start doing any of our kids camps.
Okay. So I guess for family camp too, because we have a 1-year-old, so we've got a few years before she's ready to. But still, I think just the opportunity to be out. Mm-hmm. And I mean, most people spend a lot of money to go on vacation somewhere.
Right.
And if you can be in town and have really an amazing, and it's really reasonable. It's not like what we figured is that if you're already paying for 2 kids to go to camp, it's just like $200 more and you can have a week of vacation. Wow.
So it's like super reasonable.
Yeah.
So and this last summer we had a bunch of folks who had been on summer staff whose kids were, like I said, the right age.
Okay.
So they made it a past summer staff reunion.
Oh, that's cool.
While their kids could go to camp again.
Huh. I'm going to be writing some things down on my calendar. Granted, I've got maybe a couple years, but no, those are really cool opportunities. So, so the things for kids, things for teens, things for families, and there's probably other things that that I'm not aware of, like other opportunities out there for people.
So in addition to the programs that Tilikum runs, we allow folks to reserve retreat space at Tilikum. And so there's all different kinds of different groups that come to Tilikum. In the middle of the winter especially, we are kind of a mecca for quilters. Where they and especially midweek, it works well in our calendar. So we might have 15 to 20 quilt groups, individuals from a quilt group who would come and be in residence for 3 or 4 days, and they just love the fellowship and they make quilts like crazy.
Wow.
And then, or there's other groups. For instance, last week, we were a counseling training site for a ministry to first responders. So especially with the intensity of their jobs right now and all the different things going on, that there's just a real need to be supporting them and their endeavors. And so we had 20 people in our lodge for most of the last week that were there from all the different first responder agencies, and they just love it in terms of the the peaceful setting and a chance to just kind of unwrap some of the intensity of the things they have to deal with.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I know Tilikum it's been kind of a tumultuous past couple of years, which is kind of ironically on the 50th anniversary. You guys have had some interesting stuff happen. So can you share a little bit about that and kind of what you've been doing to navigate all that?
So for camp ministry in general, COVID was pretty tough. Obviously, it's tough for everybody.
Yeah.
But all of us essentially were shut down for a while, and so that's hard when your business you have to operate to pay bills and do that thing. And so for the 2 years of the pandemic, we were thinking, okay, we're past those 2 years and we're going to move on. So 2022 was hopefully the year to get past all those things. Well, for us it wasn't, because there were two other issues that really jumped out. And one of those is, so at Tilikum we have a 15-acre man-made lake. And our lake is kind of like a big bathtub. It has a drain at the bottom, like most bathtubs, and a drain at the top, like most bathtubs. So you don't have an overflow problem if somebody puts too much water in the bathtub.
Right.
And what happened was the valve at the bottom broke.
Okay.
And so, and over the years, mud and silt had gathered at the bottom of the lake. And so you have this drain at the bottom of the lake that's covered with like 10 feet of mud.
Oh, wow.
An immense amount of mud. And so there were problems with, even with the valve broken, it wouldn't drain or it wouldn't fill. It would fill up most of the way, and it's about 60 feet deep. So it's there's a lot of pressure when you get to 60 feet. And so then it would blow out whatever that was plugging the drain, and it would drain down for a little while, and then it would fill up. So it's basically, it was just a mess. And so we were working with a bunch of engineers to try to figure out how to solve this. And it was essentially this year-long nightmare, kind of, because it was this massive task, significant amount of energy, all different kinds of agencies and engineers and you name it.
Right.
And in the end, what the way we were able to make progress finally was to pump all the water out of the lake. We had to involve, so for a long time, a bunch of our staff were pumping even 24/7 around the clock to empty the lake. And then we also had a company come in with some really big electric pumps to drain the rest of the water and mud out. And so we got down to the bottom, and then we just had to let it dry. Okay. So the summer sun, we had some great sun this summer, finally in July and August. And so after an immense amount of time, it finally got dry enough that the big track hose, the big equipment, could go down to the bottom of the lake and dig down through all that mud and get down to that valve that was at the bottom. And so that was awesome. August 25th was a great day when we could get to the bottom of the thing. And at that point, we involved the engineers in designing what should be done. We had to pour a new cement base for that, and a new stainless steel valve, this slide gate valve that went over the top of that, and then a 42-inch pipe that went straight up 10 feet in the air that would be mounted on top of that. And so all of that, we literally just finished this past week or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's been this immense long thing, but finally, and especially the rain came October 19th. And there was this big goal that we had to get the cement poured, and we had to get the base installed before that rain started, because even if you just a little bit of rain, this drain is at the bottom of the lake. That's where the water's going to go.
Right.
And if that's underwater, then we wouldn't be able to complete the task.
Wow.
So it was this.
So God was looking out for you guys.
Exactly.
Giving us all that heat at the beginning
of
October.
And even though we had a really dry fall, and obviously it affects things like forest fires and all that, but we were able to take advantage of that dry weather to get this task completed.
Wow. So and I'm just trying to imagine all this in my head. So at the bottom of the lake, before it was just a flat drain, and so all the mud would just accumulate on there. So, right?
And there was not as much for a long time. The mud wasn't as deep, and so it wasn't causing issues as much. But then the valve was old enough that it developed some problems and then stopped working. And so the combination of the two then.
Now, how is the valve operated? Open and close? Is it an electronic thing? Or
there's a 1-inch rod. It's a slide valve that opens like this.
Yeah.
And it's connected to this, so like 180-foot rod that goes up to the top of the hill. And then when you were on staff, do you remember walking on the dam and seeing the big steering wheel in the middle of the dam as you walked across the flat area going to the archery range?
Yes, okay, yeah.
There's a big metal steering wheel about this big.
It's been a while, but yeah.
And that's what that did.
So that was for the valve at the bottom. I always thought that was for the overflow valve. Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So there's another pipe in the corner over by the archery range,
right.
and that's the overflow. And that one is still functional, but ultimately we need to put a bigger pipe there.
Yeah.
It's only a 12-inch pipe, and it probably should be like a 20-inch pipe.
Okay.
And then in the wintertime especially, it would be big enough that we basically wouldn't have to worry about it.
Okay.
Like it would have enough volume that no matter how hard it was raining, basically, enough would be able to get passed through at 20-inch pipe. And
so have you had times when it's raining a lot that the lake overflows because the 12-inch is just not enough?
Yes, and so that's where we can open up the valve at the bottom. We can lower it some, like, we can know that, the next 2 weeks is going to be really rainy. So ahead of time, we're going to open the valve, lower the level, and so then there's more buffer for it. But that's really hard to do.
Yeah, I mean,
there's times when you don't really know how much heavy rain's coming in.
Yeah.
And so that's why it would be better just to have a bigger pipe at the top. And
that makes sense. So now you've got, at the bottom of the lake, you've got a pipe sticking up, so that hopefully that shouldn't be an issue anymore with it being covered. And
exactly.
So how does that feel to kind of at least have this solution in place?
Massive relief. Because we've had a year where it was just like, it's just, all the work that was involved, and you're putting on your muddy boots and climbing down to the bottom of the lake and getting in a rowboat and going out to this floating dock where you fill up the pump with gas so that it can run for another 3 hours. I mean, it was just this horrendous task.
Yeah.
Just, not something you want to do.
Well, and because you guys also use the lake for your drinking water.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So we've been super blessed. So typically, if you order a delivery of 1,000 gallons of water, it's like $1,000. Is kind of the common amount that you would pay for fresh drinking water. Well, there's this company out of state in Oregon that are being like super helpful to folks in terms of they're delivering water for $180 for a load.
For 1,000 gallons? So that's like almost like an 80% reduction.
Exactly. It's this massive, so literally, and we've needed to order water like twice a week.
Okay.
And so it's still a lot of money, but it's manageable in terms of still being able to have groups come and be in residence and have plenty of water for both guests and staff. And so that's just been a huge blessing to have their benefit, their productivity in bringing water. And but hopefully in about 2 months we'll have enough water in the lake that we can start up our water system again and begin filtering and be self-sufficient. Okay, exciting.
So you've got the rains, you've got the creek that's coming down, filling it. So it's just kind of over the next couple months, just going to slowly fill and to the point where, now is that, I remember seeing that it's a pretty complicated system you guys have out there that does all the filtration. I remember that. So is it, I can't remember though, is it there's like a pipe that goes down into the lake that draws it up? Okay, so then after a couple months, hopefully the water's to that level. Is that the idea? Okay.
Yeah, it needs to be about 6 feet from full is the first time we could start pumping. So once it gets close to being full, then there's enough that the pipes can reach and start the filtration system.
Okay. So at what point will it start looking like an actual lake again?
Sometime this winter, maybe February, March. It should be completely full. And what I'm excited about, I hadn't even really thought about this part too much. We've had some leakage every year. So like late in the summer, for instance, the waterfront where the kids are swimming, it might drop by like 2 feet.
Yeah.
Late in the summer and you have to keep moving the dock out and so on. Well, we don't have to do that anymore, I don't think. I think it'll just stay full. Okay. Because we'll have a brand new valve that will hold in all that. And you always have a little bit of water coming in. So I think it would compensate for evaporation. So it's kind of exciting that, little advantages like that will be available.
Yeah. So it's kind of been, from what I understand, with that and with COVID, there's kind of been a financial need that you guys have experienced. How's that? How have you guys been dealing with that?
We have been super blessed by lots of donors. They realize that it's been difficult for all camps, and especially for Tilikum. And so people have stepped up and contributed in ways that we've just never seen.
Wow.
And so it's so for instance, the lake project alone is we've spent about $200,000 so far, and yet we've raised like $130,000. So it's neat that this one unique project that's kind of on top of all the other things that we've got going has still been highly supported, and a lot of folks. You have lots of, say, seniors that have funds in various resources that they thought, well, I've got a little bit extra funds. I think Tilikum needs it this time. And so they would send us some pretty significant checks that we could apply towards these bigger activities like the lake.
You know, because that was something that after hearing about what you guys had gone through, hearing about, you can't have, the activities changed during COVID, like everyone knows. So I'm really grateful that you guys were able to make it through that, because it would be not an unthinkable loss, but it would be really sad if something happened where Tilikum wasn't able to continue. But it sounds like that it is going to be able to continue, and it's going to be something that only continues to get better.
Mm-hmm. And I often felt badly for, say, restaurants, for instance, during the pandemic, where they can only exist if they have customers,
right?
And it's mostly true for a ministry like a camp. But what's also great is you have people who've been contributing regularly, like monthly gifts, and those were the sacrificial regular gifts that allowed us to pay the electric bill and keep things going. That wouldn't be true in a lot of for-profit businesses.
Yeah. So what are you excited for moving forward? Obviously, you're excited about the valve being fixed and not having to worry about that anymore. But what are some of the other things that you feel excited about for the future?
For a number of years, we've realized that we really would like to build new cabins for summer camp. And so we've had the Northridge site where the platform tents and the wall tents on top of that they've been fine for 20-some years, but it would be helpful on a year-round basis for us to have some new cabins. And so in 2018, we launched a campaign to begin raising funds for these cabins, and we raised part of the funds and were able to build a new road to the Northridge side of our property.
Which is a big deal. I remember.
The other road had some issues.
Well, so I had a front-wheel drive car, and I had to drive backwards up the hill so that my wheels would have traction. And after that, they said, okay, no, can't have anyone bringing their cars up here anymore. So great to hear there's a new road.
So we have a great new road, a two-way road. It's 1,000 feet, and then a parking area up there. We decided that instead of putting the new cabins at the top of the hill where Northridge is, that we would come down that hill partway, much closer to the lake. So basically, kind of like right in the middle of that part of the property. It's the least developed area of camp. There's no buildings over there much, and so just the idea of having some cabins along the lake shore. So we call that area the Lakeside Cabins. Okay, and so. Because of the pandemic, we've had to put a lot of those things on hold and so on. And so that was pretty difficult because there was a lot of good momentum going, and so then you just have to wait.
Right.
So all those things are ramping up again. We were able to receive a $290,000 grant for solar panels.
Oh, wow.
It's a part of this project. So about 400 solar panels. Okay. It'll go out in the pasture behind the barn. It's kind of like the hottest spot in camp. Yeah. It's, and so then that's a new electrical service will go in over there, the solar panels, and then the next big push is to actually build these 8 new cabins. Okay. And so then in the summertime, we'll be able to do some more overnight camps, but especially on a year-round basis, we could do outdoor school, weekend retreats. So right now, in the middle of the winter, we might have 25 people at Tilikum on a weekend for a retreat. And so there'd be a lot of time when that 93 acres and all the infrastructure that's there is only provided for a small group of 25. Whereas if we could easily have maybe 75 people there in the winter season, as far as different kinds of groups and so on. It might be an outdoor school in the fall and the spring. It might be church retreats on the weekend or other kinds of training groups that it really would be transformative in the kind of ministry we could provide. And so that's the next big thing is the lakeside cabins.
Okay. I'm really glad you brought that up because I've heard people talk about how great would it be for Tilikum to be, it's such a great resource in the summer, but for the main one I'm familiar with is like a Waldorf school.
Sure.
Like an outdoor school where kids can come, they can learn during the off season, and then it's funding for Tilikum. It's a great, and to lease it would be much more cost effective than trying to find somewhere where you can buy something like that, which is virtually impossible. So have you been in conversations with people? Is that like an actual potential? And what could that look like?
It's, like the old movie Field of Dreams. I'm completely confident if we build it, they will come.
Yeah.
It's that we've had so many conversations with, it might be school districts, it might be different churches that want to do different kinds of programming, different kinds of groups. And our goal is these cabins would be done with a flair that would be fun and kind of fit the typical motif of the camp cabin, but be really nice basically, so that then they still work fine for adults.
Yeah.
So they would have a lot of nice amenities. They have heat and air conditioning and bathrooms in every cabin, and so it would be. It's a delicate balance that every camp has to figure out how to do that. So it can work for kids, but also for adults.
Yeah.
But I have no question that if it was available, we could start booking it tomorrow, and there'd be lots of interest for it.
Yeah. No, I can. That makes my brain go in a ton of different directions of because I think that'd be so cool. Is especially kids these days. I feel like just that phrase, kids these days. But the screens and just being around a constant urban environment to be able to go out on a constant basis and learn and be outdoors. And there's really, I heard a scientist call it they use the term called outdorphins, like endorphins, outdorphins. Right. Basically, our bodies and our brains are designed to be outside more often than inside. So I think that'd be an awesome, such an awesome opportunity if there could be something like that.
Yeah. So we have a potential of a significant grant from the Murdoch Trust. We're in the process of doing that right now. And so it's a $1.2 million project. And if we can complete, basically we have to raise about another $200,000, assuming the Murdoch Trust was able to contribute towards it. Okay. So it's the biggest project we've ever tackled. And it's really great that to say we're only a couple $100,000 shy of finishing is huge.
Yeah. And so that is for these cabins. Okay. That's exciting.
Yes. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
For us especially.
So moving forward, things should kind of go back to normal and then improve some is what it sounds like.
It's one of the biggest hurdles that we still have remaining is the whole staffing issue.
Okay.
And so just like most businesses in our world right now, staffing is a problem. Mm-hmm. A lot of, say, fast food places, they can't find enough people. Maybe they only can keep their drive-through open, but they can't do the walk-in or just whatever it is. It's a dilemma that we just had no idea would have such a significant impact on camp.
Now, is this year-round or just for summer?
Mainly summer staff.
Okay.
We've had a lot of really dedicated part-time and full-time staff members, and so, but our big concern is being able to hire summer staff in the future. So we've, in the past, Tilikum had just a really great recruiting process, and like even when you were on staff, I'm sure that back
Tilikum
then,
was a job everyone wanted.
Exactly, and that we often were able to be really selective. Like the ones we picked are the ones that, like yourself, that we were pretty confident would work great with kids, and so, but it's challenging right now because there's so many options for folks. So if you're a college student and you've got to do your best at helping pay for those credit hours, and you have the opportunity to work for $18 an hour doing this, then why would you work at summer camp?
Because it's one of the best experiences of your life.
Exactly.
I made way more than that when I was an engineer and even in real estate, but I wouldn't trade that for anything. The experience,
Exactly.
So
Exactly. So what we've tried to do is we've thought about our options, and we've actually significantly raised the amount we're offering for a summer season.
Okay.
With housing included, it'll be about $7,000 for the summer, and that's just slightly over a two-month experience. And so our hope is that the amount.
So summer staff would be paid $7,000, including housing.
That would be including the value of housing. Would be that $7,000.
Okay.
So if they're thinking about comparing that to doing something else or being someplace else, where
sure, yeah.
So then the idea is that it's raised enough that then the person who has this opportunity over here that might pay more than that, but it's like, yeah, but camp's providing enough that I know I could go and have just a great experience and learn a lot and grow as an individual. And so that's our big challenge over these next few months is we'll start the recruiting process for staff.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. And I mean, I can't imagine my son wouldn't want to work at Tilikum if they have that. If they like kids, if you like, I mean, honestly, just the people, I mean, what you said, what was the phrase, the short-term community or the temporary community is really like nothing else. I think if you haven't experienced something like that, I mean, there's really no other experience like that. Living together with people, doing life together, having a common mission. Yeah, I mean, it's what life's about. It kind of makes me sad. I could do something like that more. But
well, when kids go to camp, you certainly want them to have a transformative experience.
Yeah.
But when a college student or a high school student, we have the high school summer staff also, where they spend their entire summer ministering at camp, it changes them.
Yeah.
They're a different person when they get done at that end of that summer season. And it's awesome to see the growth that happens in their lives and their faith. And so if they love Jesus and they love kids, they need to seriously think about coming on staff.
And one of the things that I was just mentioning I think I was talking to my wife about this, being out, because I would, at the beginning of camp every day, we'd have quiet time somewhere. We'd spend time, it was like 10, 15 minutes, just alone out in nature by ourselves, which is in itself just an amazing opportunity. And I think it came up because I would always pick the zip line platform when I could, and I would tap it and watch the little wave go back and forth. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, sorry, but just that opportunity to, like, it was so intentional, like, to the community building, pouring into kids' lives. Obviously this isn't an ad for being a summer staff person, but if you have the option, you got to take it, in my mind. So can people, kind of stepping back from summer camp, could anyone from the community go out and just walk the grounds, or do they have to call ahead or pay a certain amount? Like, what does that look like?
The best scenario is just to give us a call. Okay. There's a whole lot of times when it would be fine to come and walk the grounds.
Yeah.
But we do have, like, for instance, the group that was in last week, this unique group where they're working closely with people who've had some pretty traumatic experiences, and that essentially they need to have exclusive use of our site during that time,
Yeah.
And so for somebody who would want to walk around last week, we would need to tell them no, and so on. But there's a whole lot of times when it's fine to just call our office, see if it's a good time, and then just check in at the office when you get there, and then we give them a little wood cookie name tag, and give them a little map to make sure they don't get lost on the trails somewhere, and go and explore. And
so someone can come out for free.
Yes.
Out to Tilikum. I mean,
absolutely.
Which is interesting because there's some of the best hiking trails out there. I don't know why I haven't done that. People drive a long way to get hiking trails that aren't as good as that. So, well, I'm excited for the future of Tilikum. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you guys are doing. It sounds like there's a lot of great things in store. That it's been tough, but it's been good. That's what it sounds like. Good. So thank you so much. And if you're listening to this, if you haven't checked out Tilikum, you can check out their website. I'll link it here in the description. But it really is an amazing resource for a community. Check it out for your kids too. I mean, all of the kids that came in were in our groups. It was the highlight of their summer. I can guarantee it. There's VBS and there's a number of other camps, but Tilikum really is a special thing. So reach out. Get your kids' schedule up. I don't know if there's wait lists, or if in the past if there has been, or if anyone. What is that like actually? I never saw that side of things. Is it pretty much open? As many people sign up can
so it's an online registration process, and it's just based on availability. And we have typically it's around 150 kids a week that can sign up, and so once it's full, it's full. And so last year we were pretty full by March and April.
Okay.
And so it just takes a little while to fill up, but yeah, we had about 900 kids last year signed up, and then we had to not have them come because of the lake and the staffing.
Yeah.
So last year, the one of the big challenges was that because of the lake, because of staffing, we only were able to run our Quest program. And so it was a much smaller number and so on. So hopefully 2023, hopefully we'll be back to normal.
Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. Appreciate all you've done for that program. I know you've kind of been one of the main people spearheading a lot of what's happened out there. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And
thanks for all you do for the town. And one question I'll just close with, I've begun asking people is, you've been in this community for a while. You've seen some of the hard times, the good times. Yeah. What gives you hope for the future of Newberg?
Honestly, I was thinking a lot about some of the differences between Newberg and, say, maybe in some other towns around Newberg. And I think the core of Newberg is people of faith. Basically, there's so many people who love the Lord and are passionate about helping others. And so my hope for the future is that core culture will be even stronger in terms of the ability to work past some of these challenges and care for people and impact the world.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.